All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining on the call today and representing Family Life Church. We've got a few different folks on the call. This is our third week in the, Better For It series of what we're doing here at Family Life. We're going to be talking again about COVID and its impact on not just our church, but on our members, on our society at large. Just having a conversation, having some dialogue. As a quick reminder, like this meeting, this conversation really comes from an idea that came from Pastor, right? We live in a really crazy time right now. It's totally unprecedented. There's no established like protocol or rule book or any sort of playbook as to what's supposed to happen for how you're supposed to live life during this time. And we're all kind of doing our best, right? So knowing that we're humans, we're living in a real world, dealing with real problems, dealing with real situations, but we also serve a real God. And this call is about being honest together, being honest collectively, and sharing some of these stories so that everyone else can see that, hey, look, we're all kind of going through this in our own way, and it's okay to not come out of here as Shakespeare or Michelangelo and doing all the cool things that happen when you're all by yourself all the time. So let's get started. On the call today, we've got Leah Flores, we've got Pat and Bernie Lopez, and we've got David Melendez, and we're going to just dive into some of the questions. So to kick it off, let's start off with just the first question, right? Anyone in your immediate circle of friends or family, has anyone been infected by coronavirus, by COVID? And then if so, or first off, are they okay? And then how do you feel about that? And then if not, how do you feel about that? And I'll leave this, I won't call on anybody until a little bit later, but whoever wants to answer first.
Yeah, I could go first, Josh. You know what? Nobody in my immediate family or circle of friends, just a coworker, but that's about it. And obviously, just recently at church, but nobody yet, thank God. And so it hasn't really quite hit that home. The coworker, when he had got it, and it works in a different office that I work at. That was kind of like, wow, it's a little closer to, people that I guess I'm more an acquaintance, but nobody yet from an immediate family or close friends. So,
are they okay? Do they have any major symptoms or?
You know what? Yeah, they started to have the symptoms. As far as I know, that they are okay. They weren't in the office; they were working from home, so that's a good thing. And they were just going to quarantine themselves for 14 days and kind of go from there. But last I heard, they were fine. So
that's good. Lopez's, you guys want to take a stab at this one?
I'll start for us. Outside of the cases that we've heard within church, I'm trying to think of anybody else that I know of. But
yes,
who else?
My old youth leader growing up, Alex Gomez, and he used to work with him in fireplace industry. He actually got him started in the fireplace industry. So I used to babysit their kids. I haven't been close to him in many, many years, but I don't know. When was the last time you saw him?
No, the last time I saw him was probably about a year ago, and we connect. We talk from time to time. We got together for breakfast about a year ago, and then he got it. He was in was it Pomerado?
He was in Pomerado Hospital, ICU. He should have died. He really, they are very surprised that he lived. He was in there for 6 weeks. He was, if you look on Pomerado's website, their Facebook page, they actually have a video of him being released. He was their longest patient,
wow.
COVID patient. And he lost, 60 pounds, I think. So it was really, really, really miraculous to see all the prayers for him and just the celebration of him coming out. That was like, wow, very just touching. It was amazing. So him, and then my cousin in Ohio, she had it. She was fine, totally fine.
And it's funny, right? Like it's not consistently going to impact everyone the same way.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to hear that there's, positive stories of when it does hit pretty hard, that there is, some good experiences that come out of that. So that's good. You guys feeling okay about that? Like that's probably a little bit closer to home, I guess.
All good.
Okay.
You know what? Let's put it this way. It's closer to home, and realistically, for me, my attitude has not been to freak out and worry about it. To be frank, and at the same time, we don't want to tempt the Lord, so to put it, right? So the idea is try to be more careful and more cautious with stuff. So really, the battle for me has mostly been my attitude about it. I have a lot of thoughts I'll express later about the differences as we go on, but it's real.
Yeah.
We know it's real. It's hitting people. So in reality, you gotta be careful with this until we know more. We have more information that's good information in relation to it, so we know what we really have to be moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Leah, how about you?
Well, so it did hit home with me. In the beginning of all of this, I was driving for Uber and Lyft, and so I was asking the Lord, should I continue to do this? Or do I need to be concerned? Not that we shouldn't be concerned, because this is real. As Pat was saying, we all know this is real. But, what's your word for me through all of this? And I just heard him tell me in my spirit, you're not going to get it. You're going to be fine. Okay, that's a difficult thing for someone else to believe, right? But I heard it in my spirit. So I took the Lord at his word. I got a secondary confirmation from someone else who was concerned about, my possible exposure to the virus. And that person went and inquired of the Lord, and they said, the Lord gave me a word, and they said, you're not going to get it. And I said, thank you. That's my confirmation. Great. That being said, okay, you still have to live your life respecting other people's opinions and their feelings, right? So it's not like, okay, you go and you act like you're impervious. So what happened is when Linda and her clients were exposed, I worked with them, and I actually was working with them the weekend before Linda came up with the diagnosis. So then everyone's concerned that I might have it. So it hit me here in my home, the fear. I'm not criticizing or judging anyone, because they don't know what the Lord has told me, and I'm not going to impose that on them. This is about me learning how to walk through this in spite of it. So even though the Lord told me that I wasn't going to actually get the virus, it's okay. So I'm not going to let you get it, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to go through this stigma of what it's like for possible exposure, right? People's fears, experiencing all of that. And he gave me a dream right before that started, and explained the whole thing, what to do. And so I was like, okay, well, you told me what to do when this happened, so I'm going to do it. So my housemates got scared. They, were like, well, they were afraid that one of them was afraid they were going to lose their job because they had told their employer of their possible exposure to me, secondary, I guess, through me. And they didn't even know if I had it yet, but they just wanted them to be aware, which is what they should have done. And they work in a healthcare facility. And so I just decided, based on the dream that the Lord told me, to quarantine myself away from everyone, even though, I knew I didn't have it, but it's respecting other people's fears. Not that I feel that, you should run in fear. This wasn't me running. This was me getting away, and the Lord telling me, no, I don't want you to be in that environment. So he's actually pulling you out of that environment, because if I would have stayed here, it still would have been that, what if they do have it sort of thing. And, people having a fear of you. And when it comes to their livelihood, I understand that, so I did that, and I got away, for a week. I took the test before I left, the day before I left. But what ended up happening is that it took a week and a half for the results to come back. So, and then, so, but I had scheduled a second test as well, because I figured, no, in the beginning I couldn't find it. That was the first test that I could get taken was like 2 weeks out, right? And so, people don't want to wait that long for you to take the test more than, they want your results right away. So I got Tani to get me into her clinic, and so she got me the test, but those are the results. It took a week and a half. So when I got back from my vacation, I was gone for a week. The day I got back, I took my test at the original scheduled appointment. And some people that had been exposed to me were questioning the results of my first test because they didn't think that it was a good enough sample. So thank God I did take the second test, because they were still afraid of me, even though my first test results finally came back on Monday, and I told everyone that I was negative. And so, but there's still people that had that fear that the first test wasn't valid. So then when I got my results today, and so I sent out that result as well. And it's just so interesting how the Lord is telling me, Leah, stay humble. Don't be like, I told you so. Don't be this, don't be that. Don't be defensive. It's not about you being right. It's about you staying humble and learning how to deal with people's fears. And so that's what this whole time is about, and thank God Linda and her family and everybody are okay. Nobody, the people that it has touched, nobody's gotten really sick or anything. But I believe the Lord allowed this to happen to see how his people would react. How are my people who say they trust in me, how are they going to react? Even if the worst happens, because it could, Job says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Well, what if he does slay one of us? Are we going to turn and point fingers like you infected me and it's your fault that person died? Or are we going to be children of God and believe that he loves us, and no matter what he allows to happen to any of us, that we're not going to blame one another, that we're going to put our trust in him, and that we're going to say, Lord, you show us how to get through this time. Even if something really bad does happen, that we would comport ourselves in a way that a child of God would not what would Jesus do? It's what is Jesus doing? What is he telling me? Because I think a lot of people go to what would Jesus do? And it's got to be more than that in times like this. It's got to be more, what are you telling me, Lord? What are you doing? That's just what I've been going through, and how COVID's affected me so far.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's interesting to hear. There's a couple things that you mentioned, right? So there's definitely this stigma that goes along with it. And I think that's actually an interesting point of discussion, because there is this feeling of, especially in the broader culture, not just in our church, but in the broader community, like if you get COVID to some degree, it's almost like you failed some sort of big social experiment, or you failed like some sort of big social requirement of like, you didn't stay at home enough, you didn't do enough to do this sort of stuff. And you've got a good point, Leah, in that like we have a charter, if you will, as Christians, as children of God, that we have to be faithful and we have to be trusting of God. And at the same time, much like you did, right, we still operate within the realm of the world and of what the rules that are in effect, right? You put yourself in a quarantine situation. I think that's great. Like, we still operate on both of those areas, and it's important for us to actually accept both of those simultaneously and be okay with that process. I think that's really good. That's good information that you provided. So any other thoughts on that from anyone else on the call?
Well, again, going along with what Leah says, so just to give you a little bit on my perspective on that, it really is. So I look at this as, whether this is the end of the world or not, biblically, this is something we should be paying attention to anyhow. We don't need to necessarily be looking for signs, because like the 10 bridesmaids, they were supposed to have oil in their lamps anyway. So this has been a great opportunity, especially with time off, to spend more time with God, reading the Word of God, praying a little bit deeper, drawing closer, which is something that he wants from us anyway. So in a sense, for me, it's been a bit of a revival, which has been great. The attitude that I'm talking about that I get is, yes, the mask attitude, the other stuff. So kind of like going along with what Leah said, is that really what God wants us to do is we don't need to be out on social media fighting with everybody, because we're God's children. What we should be doing is reaching out. For me especially, should be talking to people, making a phone call to a friend who might be down, or taking some donuts to a friend. Joe's pretty good at bringing donuts to everybody else, right? So
Leah, are you volunteering to get donuts? Is that what it is?
Get donuts. Yeah. No, bring me donuts. Let me clarify. Receive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Receive the donuts.
yeah. So again, it's the battle is really my own negative attitude. So more on the knee-jerk reaction level of it, right? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, this is silly, all the other stuff. But really, Christians, non-Christians, the world, you can see that a lot of people are in different places with all of this stuff, and respectfully, and people are getting it, so understandably, and they don't know how bad it's going to be for them. So we really need to, and I've really needed to take a step back, try to listen to what thus saith the Lord, right? And basically he's saying, you got a bad attitude, you need to fix that. This is more of what we're about. So it's more about reaching out, drawing closer to God now. And what can we do? What can we do for others? There's a lot of people that don't have God, that have a lot of fear. And even people with God have more fear than I would have expected Christians to have, right? But at the same time, okay, let's be careful. Let's honor what other people want. Let's honor whether or not they're wearing masks. Let's not fight with each other or turn on each other, especially at a time like this. So for me, it's been having to battle myself and take those steps back, because the initial, again, for me, it's like, come on, and it's like, come on, brother, step up, So yeah, I'm having to learn to give a little bit more respect to my brethren, so to put it.
I think, Leah, you called out something, and it's definitely evident in what you're talking about, Pat, but like this idea of humility, right? This idea of, I'm going to be humble even in the middle of my own preferences, thoughts, desires, opinions, like all that sort of stuff kind of needs to fall by the wayside, knowing that like we're in this opportunity. And I think that's actually a really good way of putting it, Pat, that this is an opportunity to actually show off a little bit of what that Christian grace should look like and how we're supposed to operate in it. It's not a proud grace. It's not a proud sort of like love. It's actually a humble humility sort of love that is really hard to show. So like both of you guys, I think that's really tough, and that's good that you guys have both taken that approach. That's really good. So you're stealing a little bit of my thunder though, Pat, because there are a couple of other questions I'm going to ask you about with regards how you're coping, how you're dealing with it, and what you're doing to connect with people. So we'll talk about those a little bit.
I'll slow down.
No, it's all good. David, did you want to add anything else to that?
You know what? I'll just kind of echo what they said. I mean, really, I agree with Leah and Pat and Bernie on that. We're real quick. Me and Sarah, we just, earlier on when all this first happened, we, it's the unknown. You really don't know. We're not doctors, and so you're really going by just what you're seeing on the news. After about a month of that, we just decided to just turn the news off completely. And now I just kind of really just look for information or research stuff that I maybe be interested in. But yeah, from the Christian aspect, we just, after about a month, we really just kind of went on. But from the Christian aspect, we really just, we decided that, it is real. It's an absolute real virus, but we decided we're not going to live in fear and allow it to control what we do every day. But still, so we go out and we do things, and we wear the mask, and we're rigorous about washing our hands. And David, now he's used to not even touching anything, poor guy. But but it's so we know that it's a real, and but we just we took that old Pentecost Christian, and we anointed Hannah and David, and we anointed our doors and said, you know what, we're gonna have faith that we're just gonna trust God, and but life kind of has to go on, and it's a great time to be a witness through that too as well. And I've had some side topics with my coworkers about just trusting in God, and that's my standpoint, that and it doesn't, and I think as Christians, we know that we have that confidence, and to not let fear get a hold of us, but it's also not a license just to go and just do whatever and act like we're immune from it, because then that's not really using wisdom either. So yeah, it's a real thing, but you know what, that's like we were at the zoo today, because you know what, we're going to continue with life, but be safe and be wise and respect others. So
yeah.
It's pretty nice.
So I'm going to start with you on this next question, because I think that actually stems really nicely into this, right? So we've been in quarantine. We've been in some form of quarantine for the first few months. We loosened up again, and now we're kind of getting back into a different sort of lockdown mode. What are you guys doing to stay sane? How are you staying sane personally, and how are you keeping your kids sane? Because you guys on it above anyone else on this call have the small kid factor that's kind of in effect right now.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about staying sane at home.
Yeah. Well, I gotta admit, man, the first month, with me trying to work from home and Sarah trying to do online school with David, we really, it was tough. I ain't gonna lie, man. It was tough. It was brutal almost. Just we're day in, day out with each other. And so we would take, seriously, on the weekends, me and Sarah would just get in the car. We would take long rides to Carlsbad and just take a loop through the 101 and just make it back home. Things like that. We really, and that's, so it was tough, especially with David, because he really didn't understand, how do you explain this to a 4-year-old? You pick him up from school one day, and then the next, you're not going to school. And then, we had to get really creative. I'm sure other parents were doing the same thing. We were going to parking lots. We were finding like 24-hour fitness. There's a big 24-hour fitness in Carlsbad. They have a huge parking lot. Nobody's ever there, doing things like that. But it was tough, and for me, I didn't find this out too recently. I think when Heidi and them, or the last week, I can't remember who was, but Sarah had mentioned something. She goes, because me, I work from home, and I'm always talking to somebody. And actually, David's vocabulary language just skyrocketed these last 4 months. I'm always on the phone. I'm always talking to somebody. So I never really realized that I'm actually getting some interaction through people. But Sarah really is just, I'm her only person that she's talking to. So, and the majority of the time she's talking to a 4-year-old. So it was tough. But, we're just doing to kind of break the monotonous and be sane. It's really a lot of just, getting out of the house and being safe, and just trying to do things creative. But the first month, man, it was hard. I ain't gonna lie, man. And so I got to give it to a single parent that was trying to do this. I don't know how they did it.
But to be fair, we did see Sarah pop in and wave, so she's still around. So that's a good thing.
She is.
You guys are still together. David's still there. Everyone's still alive and healthy, so that's good. I know. Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge for being a parent at this time, but it's also a challenge just on a mental and marriage and relational level. There's so many different challenges that go along with that.
It is. One last point, I think after about a month or so, we kind of just really just had a conversation, me and Sarah, and say, we're really putting too much pressure on ourselves as parents. We're not teachers, I think that's a gift. And our expectations of ourselves were just way up there, and where we think we need to be, and where David needed to be. and that just wasn't realistic. And so, but yeah, we're still, yeah. The one blessing I would say about all this is it has brought us closer as family. We're playing games and things of that nature. So, I like to bike now. That was a passion I lost 20 years ago, and so I bought a bike because of David, and I love it, man. I'm starting to find that little things like that. So that's what we're doing to kind of get out of this crazy COVID mode.
Good. Well, when all this is done, we're gonna have to get up and do a bike ride together at some point, because that's you just hit one of my buttons right there. Let's go biking. Let's do it.
For sure.
How about Leah or Pat and Bernie? Tell me a little bit about the time that you're spending during quarantine. How are you staying sane? Obviously, you guys have very different experiences than David or even than myself. So go for it.
Okay, well, for me, it's 1,000,000% different because I work from home. I've worked from home for almost 30 years. So now that everyone is home, I'm completely insane. So we have my oldest working from home full time now, and then Pat was off for quite a bit, and then Jessica, of course, trying to do school from home, Noah in and out. So it's hard for me to work because my office is in my living room. So it's like, oh my gosh, people, can you be quiet when I'm trying to work? And it's and we were super busy. So I had a lot of work and lots of things to do. So it made that part really challenging. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. It's kind of like back when they were toddlers when it was like that when I worked from home. So it's no different, just more of them hanging around all the time. But personally, I get out and do my walks with them. I go to the beach. I mean, we've gotten together with a few close friends that we've had over the years. After about a month or so, we're like, you know what, forget this. We have to socialize. I personally could totally stay home for months probably without doing that. I'm totally an introvert, very much so. So I really could probably do that. But I don't know, as a couple, I think it was nice to get together with some close friends and do that. So we felt very comfortable doing that, and we'll still do that in very small groups. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm totally good. I'm such an introvert. It's great.
It's funny. It's kind of funny how often, so this is the third week we're doing this call, and it's kind of funny to hear the introverts and the extroverts just be totally on opposite ends of the spectrum of like, I love it, I hate this, right? Like there's no in between really. So that's cool. That's good that you're at least not falling apart.
Now, none of that. No, not at all. I'm even doing this stuff. This is hard.
It's definitely a different muscle for sure.
Yeah.
Pat, how about you?
I mean, so again, opposite ends. For me, I'm out there. You know what I mean? So again, with some wisdom, or maybe a lack of some wisdom, we waited it out in the beginning. We listened to all the rigmarole, all the jibber jabber, and really, we got, as far as during all of that process, my faith has been building. So I'm not walking around in fear. I do, in the back of my mind, I have my gloves that I wear, or I don't mind wearing my mask in Walmart or in the stores anyway. Half the time, this, on a side note, this is something that has taught a lot of people manners anyway, that should have been covering their mouth when they cough anyway. So that part of it's great.
Can we make an agreement here on this call that should continue after this all finishes, right? Like manners, washing your hands, covering your mouth. That should be a good
Cover your mouth.
Yes.
Exactly.
Cover.
So again, in time, at Pastor Rob's, we started doing parking and in the parking lot and doing a social distancing, getting together once they opened it up a little bit. And I thought that was really good. That was really good and soul filling for all of us that were going to that. And so for that to go away again, it's like, darn it, so it's the same thing. But in terms of going to restaurants and other things, yes, again, it's out there. We'll wear our mask walking in. We'll still go to a restaurant. We'll still get together with selective friends. And I'm totally happy and content to go back to church when it is. I don't like being out of church. I have a bad attitude again, not being in church. So I need to be in church to replenish, I guess, weekly. But we're managing work. We've been really busy with the construction side of stuff. So those first few weeks we were slow, but and we were putting people on hold, and we just started doing the construction stuff that we could do on the outside, or if it was inside, then as long as nobody's there. So
Right.
We've been blessed with work. So
That's
that's
cool.
great for us.
That's actually a pretty rare success story, I guess, in terms of COVID, right? So there's those of us that have moved from going into an office and gone into the house and just full time there. I think David, you're probably in the similar boat as I am, right? You're just working from home, but to actually have construction and other jobs that are just still happening regularly, that's really rare, and it's really good to hear that that's actually happening as much as it has.
People are all home and they want to get their projects done.
That's right.
So yeah, that's for sure happening.
That's good.
There are a lot that we're saying, no, not yet. No,
Yes,
right.
we are
you
putting
still
some
have
on
to
hold.
wait.
Yeah.
But,
Yep. That's
we're
right.
jumping
Good.
at the bit, so that's good.
God has blessed, that's for sure.
That is definitely a blessing. All right, Leah, how about you? How are you staying sane? How are you staying, going through the quarantine time where you're isolated? Obviously, it's a little bit different now, but.
Yeah. At first in the beginning, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to like work longer hours than ever to try and make ends meet. But then, I was just really praying about it, and I felt like the Lord put on my heart, no, I think it's time for you to go on unemployment when the opportunity came. So I did. And what the Lord has been wanting me to do, which Pat was talking about as well, is, take this time to grow closer to the Lord, right? So take this time to read the Bible, not just read the Bible, study the Bible. The difference between reading and studying, sitting there and meditating on the word. And the Lord had told me that. He had told me, Leah, you don't just read, study, and praying and growing closer to him. And it's been a process because I love to read. I don't just, and it's always been my problem. And so, I would get 100% on my tests after reading a book or whatever the material was, but I'd fail the class because I didn't do my homework. So, that was a problem for me back in high school. So anyway, doing what he's asked me to do, it's a little bit easier said than done for me. And so I think, and I can get distracted really easily. I mean, I suppose people might consider me an extrovert, but I'm really content to just sit here, in the house all day long and just, research whatever I think is interesting, watch something, organized. Like my room is all my life is completely organized right now. I mean, there's nothing that needs to be organized anymore. And it's that thing in me that just is like wanting to escape studying. And the Lord, I think, got me away this past week to Palm Desert to get me to do that, because I was completely by myself, and I knew the situation. He's been dealing with me, and so I finally started like really studying. And it's amazing because the things that he's been showing me through that studying is like, okay, now and I always knew he wanted to show me these things, but now that what he's showing me, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for getting me to the place where I was forced to do this, through conviction of my own self, right? The Lord just started just like convicting my soul, Leah, this is important. And so I feel it's like all the process, like Pat was saying about buying your oil. We're all, the 10 virgins, we're all supposed to have our oil. Well, this is the time. I feel like this is the time that the Lord is giving us to do that, at least for me. And I would hope that everyone else, would be asking the Lord, what is it that you want me to do during this time,
All right. Thank you guys. I think that's good insight into, how staying sane, staying productive, staying some level of like dealing with this, right, is a big thing on people's minds. So how do we make sure that we're maintaining some level of sanity? There's a couple of other questions that I've got. So how are you staying in contact with people? So obviously, Pat, you mentioned it, right? We need that social interaction. We need to have some sort of engagement with people. What are you guys doing to stay in contact with people? And maybe let's put it outside of just the pre-organized, like small group meetings or any of that sort of stuff. But what explicitly are you doing intentionally to connect with people that's different than just something that's organized for you?
As far as I'm concerned,
Sure.
The people that I would normally socialize with, they're still open to socializing, so it's like my friends or our family, and so we've stayed that way, so we continue to see each other, and it's not like, and like I said, it's about respecting everybody's wishes and things like that, being mindful about restrictions and things like that, wearing your mask when you're supposed to and things like that, but definitely not staying away from anyone. Like in that aspect, I'm an extrovert. I don't mind being around people, and I love interacting and socializing with people. So, I've done that with every opportunity that I can get. So I haven't been stuck here at home. I've been doing a lot, like Bernie is saying, going to the beach, taking walks with people, things like that. I've gone hiking. I did the PCT. I did 2 legs of it with Sandy, which was great. I almost died on one of them from heat exhaustion. Not literally almost died, but it got touching there. But anyway, I'm broadening my horizons. I'm doing things that I wouldn't have normally had a chance to do, or thought about doing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in one of the last questions that we're going to put out there. How about Melendez's, Lopez's? Tell me about how you're staying in contact with people.
Well, for us, well, for myself, I think Sarah might have texted a couple of folks, but for myself, it's been really more immediate family, really. Just that lives closer to us, I guess, if you will. And from the outside of that, really, from our church family, just I've texted a couple of folks, just to, that God, I just kind of felt that, came to my mind or whatever at that moment. It's because everybody that we kind of really know lives, really, really further from us, more North County or in the prior church, really. So it's kind of hard, really to really, at least I felt really like, and then with COVID, if they're, we know how we feel, so I probably could do a little bit more reaching out, to some folks, and but yeah, more really just a couple. I've been texting folks here and there and just kind of checking in. I usually meet with Reggie kind of once a month. We were kind of going back and forth on that, and then Todd and Christoph seen them a couple of times, I guess, if you will, but yeah, I think it's definitely an opportunity. Man, I did meet with Pastor Rob at one point at the church, and social distance, of course, but that's one thing that because I'm opposite of Sarah. I love socializing, but also, I don't mind being in big crowds and things like that. But I gotta wind down a bit too. I can, then I get exhausted and I need to kind of recharge my batteries a little bit. Where Sarah's the opposite, she was telling me the other day she's totally used to this. And she goes, wow. And she goes, her outlet was really seeing people at church and saying hi, and that was her fix. But not doing that, she goes, wow, I can't believe that I'm actually, and I'm not even an extrovert and stuff like that. But it, it's something I've asked God. I said, God, to really, I've been praying about it, to put specific people in my heart and my mind to really reach out to, and I've asked God to really help me reach out to those that maybe aren't as social in our church as much, and so those are the folks that I kind of, I've asked God to really put in my heart to reach out to them who wouldn't really reach out to others normally and stuff. Yeah. So,
and yeah. This question isn't an indictment. It's not an effort to try and, what have you been doing? Like, where's your activity? That's not what we're trying to go for. But I think this actually does point to something that's really good, David. we have an opportunity to connect with people on this forum. This conversation is actually a really good way to connect with some of those folks. So if you're watching this, if you haven't reached out to somebody, if you want to talk to David or Leah or Pat or Bernie or myself, have a directory, reach out to us. And, just because you may be a little bit less sociable for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that you're not loved or that you're not cared for. This is an opportunity for us to actually get connected. And in the past couple of weeks, we've had some kind of interesting stories of like, what, had it not been for COVID, had it not been for this circumstance, I would have never spent time talking to this person or whatever. So this is that opportunity. This is a good way for us to take advantage of that. And, reach out. You never know who's listening on the other end. So Lopez's, tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing to stay in contact.
Yeah, I think, I can talk, right? So
No.
I could talk your ear off. So I can see my wife literally cutting me off at a certain point when I'm conversing with her, and she just tunes out and goes in the other direction. I'm like, okay, I'll just finish this one.
Or like something like that.
No, it's other stuff too, just everything. So, but you know what? I love people. So I love talking to people, stuff like that. So, I'll put in a call to somebody, and it'll be a long-winded. If they didn't answer, it's gonna be a long-winded message. Hey, how you doing, man? I haven't seen you for a while. I did talk to you last time at church. That kind of stuff. And left them a message, and sometimes they'll call back, and sometimes they're like, man, stay away from Pat. He talks too much, right? So just depends. But people come on my heart when I my prayer time is in the morning when I walk. It's my quiet time. I go on my walks. For two reasons, right? One, my body needs that. My metabolism needs to start. But it's my time alone with God. We get to talk. I talk his ear off. He might tune me out sometimes too at a certain point, but he's listening to most of what I have to say. But people he puts people on my heart to pray for, and I pray for them. And it's just cool. It's just part of that relationship where it's like, all of a sudden somebody comes into my mind, and I'm praying, and I'm weeping, and it's a great time. So there's that. And then calling some people from time to time. I call Joe and check on him. He calls me and checks up on me sometimes. So that's pretty cool.
It's kind of funny. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's kind of funny how many people have mentioned talking to Joe. So Joe Sariel, you're well loved. We know that you're there. We know that
Joe.
know that we're caring for you and you're okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
So I'm done. It's my wife's turn.
Okay, so yeah, he can talk. That's okay. Most of the time I can follow. But for me, I prefer not to talk on the phone. I mean, I talk on the phone all day long. So for me to talk on the phone, sometimes it's tedious. I would much rather text somebody or meet them in person. So I'm happy to shoot back text. And I do this, especially for those friends that I have at church that I typically wouldn't see other than at church because they live far or whatever their lives are. But they're on my mind. So I've texted several of them, even like my Sunday school crew. I might not see them during any periods of time, other than at church because we're just not in different places. But I miss them. I miss them a lot. So I've tried to text at least every one of them, even just once a month, just to check in. Because I am a connector in that way. I'm not an extrovert, but I am a connector. So I like to connect with my small connections and reach out. And I don't like those to go for too long. So even if it's just on some small level, just to touch base. And it's just how it is and how I am. But definitely with Sunday school kids, I miss the kids so much. And so not seeing them for so long is really hard. Like when we have our small group little backyard meeting at Pastor Rob's, and that's great because we get to see some of the kids. So it's like it's nice. We get to see them running around and having fun. But other kids that live further away, I haven't seen them in months. I mean, these babies are growing up. I mean, they're going to be in high school here, Yep. So I did go over and sit with Elisa one day and got to see all the kids, and Valma came over with her little one with Levi. So that was super nice. Socially distanced, just get our eyes and just see each other face to face because it's not the same even just texting or talking on the phone.
Right.
So I really prefer to do that. And I want to do that some more. So anyone who's open to it, like David and Tara, I would totally drive down. Me and Marlene will come down and sit in the park so we can see those kids.
Hey, David, I'm off tomorrow. I can head your way, man, if you're open.
He's not off tomorrow.
Yes, I am.
But anyway, yeah, I just want to connect on at least on small levels with everybody. And anyone who's open to, I will totally do that. I'll drive. I don't care. I just want to see the kids, and you know, you parents are all great and everything. You're wonderful. I really want to see the kids. They're the ones that change so much, and they're so versatile. They're so not versatile, but resilient. They're going to be just fine. I mean, they're going to be through all this, and sure, they might remember it and have a lot of good memories. Probably mostly good, because they're all having a blast not doing school.
I love what David said, and it's something that Narissa and I had this conversation around too, is giving ourselves a little bit of grace to be parents.
Yeah.
Not necessarily feeling like we have to pressure ourselves to be parents plus teachers plus whatever else is required. And I think you're right, Bernie, like there's definitely some built-in resiliency in the kids. And last week, talking to Brandon and Charlene, talking about their two kids, like, you're not going to mess them up. You're not going to, like, this is not it's a big event, and it certainly is momentous in history by all means, but it's not going to be like a damaging experience for someone.
They'll be fine.
You know, we gotta allow ourselves a little bit of grace and all that. So that's good. So I do want to ask a couple more questions, and then I'll let you guys go. But this is actually a new question that I was thinking about this last week. So COVID definitely is taking a lot of precedence in terms of news, in terms of everyone's attention and what's going on in the world. But there's other things, right? So there's politics, there's social upheaval, there's, you know, other stuff that's just kind of going on in the world. What else is catching your attention nowadays? And knowing that, and let me give you a little bit of context. So Pastor and I have been talking a little bit about the fact that as a church, we're not all homogenous. We're not all the same. We don't all think the same. We don't have the same values or opinions about politics, or values or opinions about, you know, social things. Like, the thing that makes our church great, and any church great, or the body of Christ great, is the fact that there's diversity. And that diversity makes us great. It makes us powerful. It makes us amazing. So, you know, we're not going to agree on every single thing. But knowing that we don't agree with each other doesn't necessarily mean that we're at odds with each other either. So in light of that, what other things have been on your mind? What other things have caught your attention over the last few weeks and the last couple of months? Like, and I can start first, right? The whole Black Lives Matter thing really caught my attention, because I think from my perspective, it was one of those areas that we don't see all the time. And it's something that really was a powerful movement that I find extraordinarily valuable in, you know, trying to make a change for the better in a lot of ways. Now, I understand not everyone feels the same way. I understand that there's a lot of politic and rhetoric around it, but you know, in the context of like, how do we treat people the same across the board? I found that so like incredibly powerful in my life, and being able to take Noah to one of the protests here in Mira Mesa and actually talking through social issues with my 17-year-old. I think that was extraordinarily powerful. And I found that was actually a really big thing for me. So I'll put it out there. And Leah, I know you're on mute. David, you're on mute. So if you want to come off of mute and talk a little bit about, give me some ideas what you've also been keeping an eye out on.
Well, for myself, and me and Sarah, you know, we have a lot of conversations, especially now, and times just from all over the spectrum, from politics to everything that's going on in our day and age. And so, you know, and so really, it just kind of what I've been trying to pay attention to more is in all this, you know, because you can. There's two spectrums. You I'm sure everybody has an opinion on the politics behind everything that's going on, and just, you know, truth and all that stuff. But you know, I just really more recently been trying to really just for myself, just trying to really not get it too much involved into that, but more of what is God really asking me to do in this time. And so that's kind of been my prayer, and how, because I think this is a time, and I think this is a time in our nation. I think this is a time as a Christian where I personally think God is trying to wake the church up. I think there's a lot, that can be done. I think there's a lot of, just, I think the world needs God, you know what I mean? And so I'm trying to ask God, what can I do? And then I've been trying to recently what can I do? What can we do? What can I do specifically, and God, because how can I affect my community, I guess, in this, and so I don't really quite have an answer for that yet. I mean, I know it's really just having a conversation probably with people, in my community, and but yeah, I guess I've been, and then that kind of stuff I do follow. Like I don't really turn on Channel 10 News and kind of watch all the statistics and all that stuff, but I do kind of follow, some of the protesting and some of the things that's happening, and the reasoning behind certain things like that. And so, and I look at the church spectrum of that, and what pastors are saying, and what church leaders are saying, and what things like that. So, yeah, those are the kind of really, yeah. So that's kind of what's been sticking out to me. Is like, what can I do, knowing that I have something that can inside of me that can really, it's a gift, the Holy Spirit, that can really change somebody's life that doesn't know about that. And I have it. How do I make a difference in community without getting involved in all the chaos that's happening?
Sure.
So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, this is actually a really interesting idea, right? That we are being set up for action in a lot of ways, where however you feel about it, this is an opportunity for us to act. And I think the best of what the church is a church in action and not a church in observation. Because when we observe, then we disconnect from the communities that we're a part of. And that always creates opportunities for us to just be left behind on stuff. And I think we are called to be hands and feet, and hands and feet don't not get involved, right? We get involved, we touch, we reach, we handle situations even when they're difficult, even when they're tough. And that's a big thing to be aware of, and it's tough. And I don't bring this topic up just for the sake of like, let's give a superficial answer. It's okay to struggle with this, and that's where I'm really wanting to make sure that everyone is aware of. Pat, Leah, anybody else want to add some commentary on that? And Leah, you're on mute, just real quick. There you go.
All right, so you touched on something about where the hands and feet, and we are, but we're only the hands and feet of Jesus if we're taking direction from him. That is the thing. He is the head, and we are the hands and feet. So if we're not taking direction from him, then we're just moving in our own strength. And so that's what I feel the Lord is telling me right now is, Leah, you need to let me finish the work in you. You see what's going on in the world, and I want to purge any of that might be in you, any of those evil, any sinful thing, because only he can expose those things to you, right? We don't even know some of the things that, like the things that the Lord has been showing me about myself. Some of them I didn't even know were there. And so when he brought them to my attention, it's like, wow, I didn't know that that's how, why I did some of the things that I did, or whatever, my strongholds that the Lord is trying to work out of me. And so, in these last days, we are in the last days. I'm not saying that we're in the end, but we are in the last days. We know the birth pains are getting closer. And it's, what is the Lord trying to get from the church right now? It's like, okay, how are you going to navigate through all of this? You see evil rising. You see me exposing the evil that there is in the world. And at some point, he's going to remove himself away from all of that and let it come out full force. At that point, that's when the church rises up, right? And that's where we're going to show our light. So we need to prepare our hearts right now. Let him finish the work in us in order to be that light that rises up to meet the evil. So what is the head telling you? We have to be taking direction from the head, because I don't want my hands, if I'm a hand and if I'm a foot, whatever part of him that I am, I don't want to try and do anything on my own. I have to do it with him. It has to be him in us, working through us.
Sure. Pat, you want to add anything to that?
Okay. Here we go. Gosh. You know what? I look at all the stuff that's going on as a lot of noise that tries to distract what God's trying to do. So God, I think it's kind of like, if you listen to all of the noise, you can get overwhelmed, and it really does take over your mind. So in drawing closer to God, that's key. It's been key. And again, experiencing revival in my life, and it's been great. What's going on? I'm me personally. This is just Pat, so I speak for Pat. It grieves my heart to see on social media, which what was intended for people to have fun and show the family, and hey, we're hanging out, we're doing this, and it's pretty cool, and you're not doing things for likes or any of that kind of stuff, but just the politics and everything now, where we already know that we're a country divided. That's pretty evident, but we can't let that get into the church, you know. And in God's way, for me, my thing is I cannot engage on those issues, because there's one side here and there's one side there, and they both have good, valid points at times, but at the same time, what is God saying? We're here, okay, now we're fighting back and forth over an issue that gets raised up, and you're all entitled to your opinions. I'm entitled to mine. What we should be is open-minded and be open to change when we know that we're wrong, right? Or we find out that we're wrong. But I'm trying not to engage on that stuff, because when I see it, the back and forth, again, on social media, oh, guys, don't do that, you know. So that's me. Don't do that. Don't go there. Don't engage, you know. And I see it. I'm on the verge of dropping social media just because of that. But I still want to stay connected to the people that I'm connected to and enjoy the good parts of it. So that's there. This is, again, an opportunity for the church to step up and be the church. Yeah, I know, you know, the government's trying to shut us all down. I understand. I think, like Leah said, there's a lot of truths that have been opened up to us that we might not have seen, or at least to me, that I hadn't seen working in the spiritual realm, or what's going on with the nation and politics and all that kind of stuff. And it's been enlightening to have a lot of that brought to the surface. So, man, it's something that, yes, I agree. I think we're living in the end times, or pretty evident with a lot of evil out there, and we really need to be what God wants us to be. We got to get focused. I got to get focused and stay focused on that, especially.
Sure.
So
David, you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I just, you know, it's true. I kind of was thinking what Pat was saying, and, you know, and this, you know, if I were to be honest, which is one reason I don't like make a lot of comments on social media, you know, about that kind of stuff, because it just, you know, I have my opinions and stuff like that, you know, but I just, and I don't, you know, like, I'm not saying that, you know, I look down on people who make good comments. I mean, to each his own. But I just think that, I mean, this is, I don't think we'll ever see something like this in our lifetime again, and I had a conversation with Sarah. I think in San Diego, my personal opinion, I think we don't see a lot of riots and things like that because San Diego is a military town. There's so many different nationalities and so. But besides that, I just think what Pat and them and they were saying is, which is what I don't have an answer for, but I'm looking for myself is it's really the love of God, the love, if it's the love thy neighbor, and so that's where I'm just, kind of like, trying to like, God, I don't want to get caught up in the left or the right, even though I have, may have my personal opinions, but to go and have plead my case to somebody just doesn't really, it just one, with David and stuff like that, don't have the time for and stuff like that. And second, I just think that I would rather God help me to have a good, meaningful conversation with a neighbor about love, about Christ, and let God put the words in me to influence that, and leave it at that. But yeah, it's a lot of craziness, for what you see in social media and just what's going on in this world. And so, and as Christians, I think we really need to be asking ourselves really that question is, what's my purpose in all this? Because we have something inside of us that they don't have, and we have something that's powerful. How do we share that? How do we share the treasure that's hidden? So that's the question and the answer that I think each of us, in my opinion, for myself, I should say, that as God, where when I'm walking out the doors, when I'm going here, when I'm there, put somebody in my way that I can have a conversation with.
All right. Well, thank you all. I mean, this is not an easy topic by any means, and I don't necessarily want to derail anything on the conversation. This has been really good. I have a few more questions, but I think we're pretty good for tonight. We've covered a good amount of content so far, and I think that's probably a good enough time for right now. We are going to keep these conversations going. I urge you guys that are on this call, and then you that are watching, right? Get engaged with these conversations. Get engaged with conversations about how people are dealing with the current environment. How are they dealing with COVID? How are they dealing with isolation? How are they doing with loneliness? How are they doing with mental issues? How are they dealing with the social upheaval? All this stuff matters, and it's all part of this world that we're living in. And then we're serving a real God that in the middle of all this is taking us through it. So how do we make sure that we are being the light, that we are being the salt, that we are actually doing what God is calling us to do here on this earth? It's important for us to have this dialogue. So thank you all very much for your time. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Looking forward to seeing this tomorrow or Wednesday, tomorrow, today, whatever the day is that this is being presented. Looking forward to seeing it online, and God bless you all. If you're interested in joining one of these conversations, reach out to Pastor and we'll make sure that we get one of these chats going for you as well. But thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Josh.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Peace out.